take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me today. Super excited about our guest today. A couple of reasons. One, because we get to cross a state off of our list. That's right. We're coming close. I'd have to get into research. By the way, I gave them the summer off. Isn't that nice? How many of you still get the summer off? Show of hands. Just real quick. Show of hands. Anyone? Like summer break still? Is that a thing as an adult? Okay, maybe not. But I'm going to have to put research on how many states do we have left? Because this state is definitely not on the list anymore because it's Montana. Hello. Welcome to the Mountain Time Zone. You know, there used to be a thing back in the day. You also might remember this. MCI. Now, they would send out calling cards. That's right. Before you could make a long distance call, you need like a credit card. Some of you might remember this. Some of you are like, what are you talking about? I'm telling you, go Google this. Fun stuff. MCI card. You had to have one of these cards in order to call grandma or back home or whatever. So sometimes it was really hard to connect with people because you didn't have your cell phone handy. Sometimes people just didn't show up. Sometimes they stayed in their bed. All right. That might be a dig on me a little bit, but help me welcome in my guest, Emily. Emily, how are you today?
So good. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I am glad that you're here as well. Again, super excited that we got to connect. I love when the social media connection actually happens.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Because people want to dig on social media, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost feel like, you know, social media is that person on the playground. I'm sure you never did this, but the person on the playground that like, nobody really played with and everybody made fun of. You never did that. I'm the only one.
I've always been an includer, actually.
Oh, really? An includer. That's a good word.
Yeah. I don't know. Just like, I mean, I think too, I have to be aware of it now as an adult. If I like, oh, so-and-so, you want to come over? I'm like, wait a second. Maybe we just need to be at home with ourselves, you know? Yeah. I love having people over, being around people.
You're big on that hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
I love having people over too. I think it goes back to the days of I wanted to show everybody my room.
There you go.
Come look at this thing I have.
This cool thing.
So Emily, help us with this as we jump in and jump off and go further. Help us with this. What style of shoe does Emily like to wear?
Like a cute tennis shoe.
Any cute tennis shoe. It's so descriptive.
Okay. So like a canvas tennis shoe with a fun fabric on it. Is that more descriptive? Is that better?
I mean, sure. Yeah. You're wearing them. So we're just doing some shoe judgment. That's sometimes what I do as well. Shoe judgment does occasionally take place on the show. So this is one of those moments.
And you don't want to wear a flowered canvas tennis shoe. You're judging it hard.
I mean, are there sunflowers? Because I could maybe get around that.
No, blue. It's like a blue background with pink flowers, or have a green pair.
Now the blue is, if I look up, is it a sky blue, or some might even say a Carolina blue?
Yeah, like Carolina blue. Mm-hmm. Make a statement.
Well, help me with this, because realistically, this is home stretch time for me. This is the season is like coming to a end. We know how the story ends. I know how the story ends now. That's the joy of being behind the curtain. I ignore the man behind the curtain kind of thing. But I know how this season's going to end, and it's awesome. Let me just say, the next 3 weeks, this week, next week, and then the following week, seasons are awesome. They're coming to an end, and you're part of that home stretch. But help us get to this home stretch.
Yeah.
This aglid, this thing that we've been talking about for so long now. People are like, I think I finally, after a couple of months now, I know what an aglet is. But for you, help us with that aglet. Now, again, just to help if somebody's just brand new to us and they don't know, that aglet is that plastic thing at the end of our shoelace. Sometimes it's metal, but most of the time it's plastic. End of our shoelace, that if we didn't have it there, the shoelace would unravel. It would just fray. It would just not serve its purpose. So if this thing was not in your life, what would life look like?
Yeah, life would be a lot more questions, but also a lot more fear of the questions. Things would unravel without answers and be nothing to tether me to hope or to God's faithfulness.
Wow, that's good stuff. So almost like I'm just visualizing what you're saying here. I'm thinking we're at a lake, and maybe there's some rocks on the lake, and the water's kind of, I think it's called lapping, when it's kind of coming up on the shore, making that lapping sound. And in the distance, we can see some maybe boats coming in, boats coming out. But I've also noticed too, when you're boating, you can't just let the boat sit there. You have to have it kind of tied down to something like an anchor or a dock. So if this thing you're saying now, it's your faith.
Right. Yeah.
What would life look like if Emily never made any decisions to go follow Jesus or to be in his presence or to make a point of being in his presence?
See, I've always followed Jesus, if you could say that. The switch happened when I stopped trying to work hard to prove that I was good enough for him or earn God's favor. That's where I was, shifted out of that. I would still be exhausted trying to prove my worth by doing all the things. I would still be measuring my success by how much that I accomplished. That's part of where I would have been, because that's where I was.
Do you remember what that moment looked like when you were still kind of, as you said, measuring your success, trying to earn favor or anything like that? What did it feel like? What did it look like? What was that experience truly like?
Yeah, it was so contrasting. I didn't understand God's love. It felt conditional. I knew God loved me in my head, but in my heart, I didn't believe that he loved me. And I definitely didn't think that he liked me. So when I recognized God's unconditional love for me, I read a book called Real Christianity by Carrie Schmidt in the middle of a faith crisis. And it was one of those where I was just asking, if this isn't true, what else isn't true? Through that, God was able to lead me to this resource that grounded me in his unconditional love. And it was so different. It was so life-giving to realize that the pressure was off. The pressure to perform, the pressure to basically take the test for myself and have to ace it. When Jesus took the test for me, it felt like a lot of pressure being lifted off of my shoulders.
Stepping back in that time machine that I so often like to do, I can remember this vividly. I remember being back in fourth grade. I can tell you exactly where I was sitting in the room. I can tell you what it smelled like. I can tell you what everyone else was doing. I can tell you everything. And I remember the teacher coming around. The white piece of paper was handed out to us. Strict instructions. Do not flip this over until I say go. And I had no idea. Fourth grade. I was a little lost, maybe. But I remember immediately seeing friends flipping this paper over when she said go and writing vigorously to fill in the answers on the times tables test that we were taking. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know any of these answers. Like, I don't know 6 times 9. I don't know 7 times 8. I don't know that. And I know some people right now did that math real quick and they're like, well, come on, Neil. What's your problem? There was so much pressure to do that perfectly. Still to this day, terrible at my times tables, for the record. I still have to get out that calculator. Thank you. And my teachers, by the way, they lied to us. Side note, they lied to us. They said we would never use calculators. Come on. Where are they now? We use them every day. I say that because when I hear your story and I hear you kind of share that with us, I kind of put myself back in that moment. I felt like I had to be perfect. And I grew up in the church. I think you did as well.
Yep.
How did you really just say, okay, I can't get this math test perfect. How did you really do that?
It all started with the first thing that shifted was my motivation. So my motivation no longer was, I am really afraid that God's going to leave me if I don't get this just right. I feel guilty that I am not doing enough. Those left in exchange for, wow, I am so deeply loved. So therefore, I can do this thing and I can serve my church, or I can do this ministry or love my family well. The first thing that shifted was that motivation. As we journeyed through that, like learning too, like how to rest. God invites me to rest. So the first thing that changed was my motivation. And then the second thing that shifted was I stopped trying to do all the things. I'm not trying to prove anything, because when we know that we already belong, and we believe who God says that we already are, then we can rest in that and work from a place of acceptance instead of trying to work so hard to gain God's approval. And then after that, start letting go of that perfection, that trying to get it just so. but it always comes back to whose I am and who he says I am. When I'm grounded in his faithfulness and the fact that he says that I am beloved, accepted, approved of, that shifts everything so that I can let go of the perfection. I can let go of the striving and the exhaustion. I remember a time when my former pastor's wife called me and she asked if I could do something. I looked at my calendar and there was like this little window of time. Yeah, I can do that. And I remember crying after I got off the phone, recognizing the exhaustion. Like, wow, I have just not created any margin in my life. That's how that perfection showed up for me, was like doing all the things. Letting it go allowed me to find rest, allowed me to be more connected to God and really live the abundant life that Jesus came to give us. He didn't want us barely making it.
But if I'm going to push on that, if we can use the word friend in this
Yeah.
moment, if I'm your friend and we're at a coffee shop and I'm hearing this and I'm thinking to myself, Emily, that's great. Everyone needs to learn the power of the yes, I believe, the power of being able to step out and say, yes, I'm going to do something, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a fearful thing. For some, it's been podcasting. That was scary for some.
Sure.
Having to hear my voice back again when my wife listens every week. I'm like, I've heard this. I know how this one ends. Just fast forward to about 20 minutes in, it gets a little better. The power of the yes. But I think there's also so much power in the no. And I'm not saying in the no like you have the knowledge no, but in the no to say, no, I can't do that. No, I won't do that. No, I have to stop doing that. I think her name's Simone Biles. Are you familiar with her?
Simone Biles. Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you. I knew I was going to get her name wrong.
Yeah, yes.
Are you familiar with that situation at all? Did you follow that? So to help for those that haven't, and help me with this because you might know a little more than I do. To me, she gets all the way to the Olympics. This last Olympics that they had, I think in Beijing. She immediately gets on the biggest stage, women's all-around gymnastics. She's a multi-Olympic gold medalist. I think she has like 17, 18, 20, I don't know, a lot.
Wow.
And she says, you know what, guys? Sorry, I'm out. I need to take a pause. And people mocked and ridiculed and were awful. Now, I don't know her, obviously, personally. Don't know her. I don't know what her inner whatevers are dealing with. But she stopped. She didn't compete. People were mad. Sponsor dollars, I'm sure, mad. Now, I know you're not as far as I know, not an Olympic athlete. When I hear you roll that back again and share that, do you at all have some empathy or do you at all see some similarities with her and you in that moment?
Yeah, I was fascinated when that story was going public and wide, how much it mattered to me. Some stories just captivate us. I wasn't really following the Olympics last year anyway, but just watching her story drew me in because she was doing something that took so much courage to say, I don't have the strength to do this. And as you read up on the story, she was actually having some mental equilibrium challenges that made it very dangerous for her to be performing the flips and the jumps that she typically does. So it was so critiqued from the outside. Even so, she knew that it was good for her and it was best even for her team that she stay safe, no matter what the ridicule was. I think it's very interesting to ask that question. Like, do you see any similarities between her? We all have this performance that we can do in our life where we're performing to, maybe we're just performing so we can get a paycheck, or we're performing to do things for the people that we love. But if that performance ever becomes something that we measure our worth or our success by, it can be even harder to say, no, I need to stop doing this. This isn't healthy for me. This isn't safe for me. Even the people that I'm trying to serve, it can get to a point where it's, why am I doing all of these things? Well, I'm doing it so that so-and-so is happy, but they don't even care about what I'm doing. I just think that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So we do all have those things that we're performing in our lives. And we have to be able to analyze them and say, is this working? I think it's Bob Goff that said every Thursday he quits something. Somebody asked him, well, how do you, by the time you've been doing this for years, how do you find something to quit every Thursday? And he said, we all find really silly things to be doing and busy because we are too busy. We can look at our schedule and go, what can I quit? What can I stop doing so that we are living a more rested and a more connected life.
By the way, just to help, because I had to Google it, I was dying of curiosity. I am a sports nut, but gymnastics is one of those sports that I don't stay up to date on. I really don't. Like every 4 years, I might care a little more. But anyway, so she is widely considered the greatest gymnast of all time. She has won a total of 32 Olympic and World Championship medals to date. So 32.
Wow.
That's a lot. I feel like. That's incredible.
That's incredible.
But again, the power of the pause, the power of saying, okay, I'm going to stop. Now, Emily, last I checked, you don't have an MD in front of your name or a lot of letters after your name and signifying or emphasizing that you have some doctorate on some level, right? Did we miss that in any way? You don't have that, right?
No, don't have it.
Okay, just checking. So again, going back to that coffee shop kind of moment, if somebody comes to you and says, Emily, I don't know how to be still. I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to slow down. I don't know how to insert, and they just keep cascading all of these things on you. I don't know how to just be calm. Do you have an experience where you kind of struggled with that and then maybe how you worked through that?
Sure. So it's funny. I think it was 2018, that was the first time that I said, hey, God, do you have a word for this coming year? You know, a lot of people do like a word of the year and it kind of becomes their theme or whatever. But it was the first time that I asked God, like, do you have an intention or a word for this coming year? And he clearly spoke, be still for me. And so I love this question, like, how do people be still? But one of the things that I thought when he gave me that word was my year was going to be one that was more calm and a little bit less crazy. And, you know, I had this picture in my head of what it was going to look like. And I realized very quickly into this year that it wasn't that my circumstances were necessarily going to be still, less on my plate, that God wanted to teach me stillness in the middle of chaos. I get to choose. And I think a lot of us don't feel like we can choose. We're almost a victim to our schedule and we're just going here and there and things that are going on around us. A lot of times it shows up for me in that I feel like I'm supposed to be doing more. So if something isn't working out the way that I think it should, maybe it's even my business. Because in addition to my podcast, I do coaching, and the coaching side of things has been slow to grow. And I can look at it and go, I'm supposed to be doing more. Obviously, I'm not doing enough marketing, or I'm not talking to enough people, and that might be true. But if God is telling me to be still because he's got this, then I take my hands off and say, okay, I did my connections for today, or I serve the people that I do have as clients right now. And if he's telling me to be still, I have to take my hands off of it. And it becomes a game of learning to trust, learning to hand it over and say, God, I really do believe that you're orchestrating in my life. I really do believe that you're putting pieces into place, because you can do far more than I can, even when I'm running ragged and doing all the things. So if somebody's struggling to be still, one of the first things that you can do is you can set a timer for like a minute on your phone and just practice being, because you are a human being and not a human doing. But a lot of times we act like it's the opposite.
Well, I got to be honest. When I hear this and I hear you say it back, Jesus, you're going to have to take control over this. My mind immediately goes to, it has to. I mean, maybe others are like, I don't think it has to. But Jesus, take the wheel, that amazing Carrie Underwood song I think everyone can sing in their sleep. But something I noticed as I Googled the lyrics, it says, we know this one. We know, Jesus, take the wheel, take it from my hand, because I can't do this on my own. Like, we can belt that. I'm letting go. But it's the next part that I think we maybe miss or get wrong or forget about. It says, save me from this road I'm on. Jesus, take the wheel. So think about this for a second for you. If Jesus doesn't take Emily's wheel and save her from the road that she's on, and you just continue to stay in this active busyness, this active, like, I'm just gonna keep doing more. Yes to everything. Like the Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man. Like, I'm saying yes to everything. Great movie, by the way. If you kept saying yes to everything, what does that do to you?
It wears me out. That road was so exhausting, not just because of all the things I was doing, but all of the things that I was trying to control. I was trying to control other people's perception of me by saying yes. I was trying to control God's perception of me because I was so afraid that he would be disapproving of me, not recognizing and living from a place of acceptance. I was really trying to control God's happiness. If we get into like attachment theory and all of those things, like it's a really unhealthy place to be, to try to control other people's emotions, and especially God when we're in that spot. But that's where I was. That road that I was on was leading to burnout and resentment, continuing to look towards other people for approval and validation.
Because again, I think so many times we want to say yes. I know in Oregon, it's a thing. Is FOMO really a thing in Montana? I mean, probably not just in Oregon, but in Montana too. You guys have that out there, FOMO?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, to help, FOMO is the fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Is there that fear you have to be on guard for, that you have to really be cognizant of, that you have to make sure that doesn't creep back into your life?
I have to recognize when my motivation has shifted again, because it's easy to slip back into those old patterns of performance. Wait a second. Why am I going? Because I care who will see me? Why am I doing this? Because I am genuinely trying to serve my family, or because I think somehow it makes me a better mom if my house is clean, or any of those? Have you ever heard of The Joy of Missing Out by Tanya Dalton? I have not read her book, but I love the concept. There's so much joy in missing out. We know that every no is a yes to something different. When we're saying no to good things, it's sometimes hard. We're like, I don't want to let go of this good thing, when God says maybe he has something better for you. Or if you're saying yes to all of the things that you are supposed to or that you should do, you might be missing out on your best and what God wants to do through you and for you, because we're all so unique. We don't have to do things exactly like our neighbor or the person that we sit next to in church. We were created uniquely. There's so much joy in finding that purpose that is ours, doing the things that light us up. I think sometimes we get the idea that we're supposed to be miserable, especially in like Christian spaces. We're supposed to be doing the thing that we dislike the most, because somehow that's like bearing our cross. And there's definitely room for self-sacrifice in bearing our cross. God also delights to give you the things that are good for you and that work with your personality. So there can be so much joy, back to the joy of missing out, finding what lights you up, what works for your personality, and what's your unique mission and purpose.
I'm going to maybe step in that friend box for a moment.
Yeah.
Because all this sounds great. It truly does. It's like, okay, I got it. Got to get that pause in my life. Got to look at, celebrities who are embracing that on so many levels, as we've talked about. But I know friends, and I have family even, who have said, you know what? I'm going to take a pause from church. I'm going to say no to church on every level. And they've almost walked away from it. Now, I know it's easy in this day and age to cancel somebody. It's easy to delete them from your phone contacts and just burn that bridge and be done with it. And I'm not walking down that road again. If you didn't have a church community around you, and you didn't have those people, maybe those elder women or maybe even peer women speaking into your life saying, no, Emily, it's good to take the pause. It's good to say the yes. It's finding that balance. Ironically, we're talking about it almost like a balance beam in some respects. Thank you. How would that look, and what would that feel like?
Yeah. Well, when you say it's easy to like walk away from it all, I think I'm probably going to get to the punchline before you're headed. The thing that was the aglet for me was God's faithfulness and his character. Because if I can measure things by that, then I can filter things out and I can let things go. But that keeps me, I used the word tethered, keeps that lace from unraveling too much. There have been things that have unraveled for me. One of those was my church community. When I started understanding God's grace, I thought everybody would be so excited about it because it was so life-changing for me. It flipped everything on its head. I didn't have to perform anymore. God's grace was sufficient, not just for salvation, but for my life, for everything. And it was amazing. It became clear over the course of a couple of years, the church community that I grew up in, that I got married at, was not where we should raise our kids or stay. we had to leave and walk away from that to find a healthier place. And in that transition, we did have to stop going to church. I needed a break. And I think we fear that break, doing things differently. I knew that I didn't want to project onto a new community the pain and the triggers that I had just walked out of. And I also wanted to be able to discern if it was an unhealthy place, but I knew that I wasn't in a spot where I could discern between, is this healthy or is this a trigger or is this unhealthy? All of that. So we did take 8 months off of church, of going to a church building, I like to say, because the church is people, not buildings. We did take that space and we needed it. The thing that kept me from walking away from all of it was God's character was so different from the abusive religion that I had experienced. I didn't want to walk away from all of it. I just needed space from the church building piece before getting back into it.
There is such a power in saying no. There's such a power in saying yes. There's such a power, again, in the pause. There's such a power in sometimes having to leave a situation to walk away from something. But, you know, for me, I think of my daughter in these moments. And I know you have kids too. You have 4 girls at home. But your girls are going to look at you. They're going to look at mom. They're going to see mom. And they're going to notice things about mom. And they're going to pick up on things whether you want them to or not. I mean, that's just how kids are. But what is one thing that you really say, you know what, if they could learn this or if they could learn that, man, I've done my job as a mom, what would it be?
Wow. Okay. So I would have immediately jumped to that they are just unconditionally loved and accepted. I want my kids to know that because I didn't feel that from God, especially. Really, I think I would say that they have been uniquely created and that they don't have to apologize for their personality. They don't have to try to be smaller. They are someone who leads from the back of the room, that they don't feel like they have to be louder if they're an introvert, that they are just so confident in who they've been created to be.
Why would you want them to learn that?
Because they don't have to change. They don't have to try to fit in. They don't have to play small. They can be confident in their uniqueness and not try to conform to the world around them or the church around them. Yeah, that's why.
Do you think just because on some level that's what you had to walk through, that's the road that you were on for so long, and you're like, listen, there's certain parts of towns, I think, or maybe even cities, that we don't purposely go down because we're like, whoa, bad area, not a good place to go. And is that kind of what you're saying, is like, hey, if the GPS tells you to go here, don't do it. Don't go there.
Sure. I think there's just a lot of messages that tell, I don't know, specifically women and girls what they're supposed to be, what mold they're supposed to fit. It can be even, sometimes it can come through the form of a list in the church. Do all these things and that's what makes you a good Christian. Or if you're fulfilling these roles, that makes you a good Christian wife or a good Christian mom, or these expectations that get put on women in our society. And I don't want them to feel like they have to do all the things. They get to figure out what is right for them to be doing and what works with, like I said, I've said this a few times and maybe I should expand on it, but just like what works for your personality. Like you have been created so uniquely, and I never want them to lose that. I don't want my most introverted, sensitive kid to feel like she's too much for being sensitive. I don't want my kid who struggles with separation anxiety. I don't want her to feel that's wrong. That's part of who she is. Or my kid who's a leader, or my youngest who's like a spitfire. I never want them to feel like they have to be different, because we get so many messages from secular world and the church that says this is what you're supposed to be. And I don't want them to ever feel like they have to be something they're not.
My wife, but she told me a couple of years ago, and really this even came through a very good friend of mine who's a past guest. He said, you know, Neil, you're not everyone's favorite cup of coffee. And you might not even be everyone's favorite flavor of coffee. And I was talking to a friend of mine last night who's kind of going through a struggle, and he calls up and we're talking. And I said to him, well, Tony, making up a fake name, I'm hazelnut, and not everyone loves hazelnut. And in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, it was like almost like an out-of-body experience. Like, that is profound. I gotta remember that. You know, I don't know if you ever have those moments like,
right?
Like, whoa, hold on, I gotta find something to write that down with. But it's pretty easy because I love hazelnut, and not everyone does. Not everyone loves hazelnut. It's not the popular flavor to put in your coffee. It's an acquired taste. Some are like right now, they're like, actually, Neil, I kind of actually like hazelnut. But how do you come around that? How do you educate and help others realize that, you know what? So what, you're a hazelnut. You might be a triangle. You might not be that proverbial square. You might look circle in shape, but in your heart of hearts, maybe you're a trapezoid. I know I'm dropping some shapes there. Parallelogram was my favorite because it was always fun to say. Maybe you're not that. How do you come around that, and how do you help folks do that? And maybe this is the opportunity to maybe really share what you do.
Yeah, I come alongside women. Right now, I have a 4-month coaching container where me getting to know you and help you sort through the messages that you've been given that say you need to fit this box, or you need to do it this way, or would you please be more like someone else? These things are said to people and they internalize them and go, oh, I must be less than. So I want to come alongside you and help you know how worthy you are, how valuable you are, not because you can fit a mold, not because you can do all the things, but because you're you. So it is a long process of untangling past beliefs or things that aren't serving you, so you can let those go so that you can have the relationship with God and the relationship with yourself that you're desiring, because we desire that connection. All of these things that we're doing, or all of this trying to fit a mold or measure up, is what's actually getting in the way. I'll give you a couple tips for just discovering what you want. And I think going back to being still, it really does sometimes boil down to not having enough margin. We're just so busy where the demand of just what's the most immediate next thing that we have to be doing. Just take a couple minutes and be still. Try to create that margin, protect that space for yourself. And then also when you are trying to discover, if you've been trying to fit the mold or measure up or do things for other people for a long time, you might have forgotten, like, what do I actually enjoy? What do I like to do? Do I do this thing for other people, or do I do it because I enjoy it? So find something that brings you joy. You can even used to call these micro joys on a podcast that I did with a friend. So find micro joys, things that light you up. That will be a really good way to figure out what is good fit for you. And what are those JOMO, those joy of missing out? What can you miss out on so that you can have a better yes? Yeah, that would be some practical ideas for pressing into that.
I think that's solid advice. I like those micro joys. And you called it something else. What was that other thing you called it?
Oh, I said JOMO, the joy of missing out. Yeah. Instead of FOMO, because you asked if we have that in Montana. You're hilarious.
Always hilarious. People say that all the time. Everyone says that.
But yeah, my personality can definitely have a tendency towards wanting to be in the middle of all of it. I think COVID helped me so much when everything was shut down. Oh, I don't have to be everywhere. And maybe I do like being by myself. Maybe I do like being home for a couple days at a time.
I mean, I loved it because I got to work from home and I got to wear a hoodie and shorts all day. COVID was rough. I need coworkers. I'm not a good independent person by myself. Well, awesome, Emily. So you mentioned kind of helping women and what you walk through and untangling things. By the way, I think of that as like the hair, like what's the best way? Is there a website? Is there a email? How can they get connected with you on a more deeper level?
Sure. Check out my podcast, Abundant Grace. Follow me on Instagram. I'm emily.abundantgrace. Post reels over there. I'm working on some new things so you can stay updated. And I'd love to invite your listeners to a 4-day challenge. It is a challenge to help us rest and who God says we are. It's an identity challenge, maybe an anti-challenge. We're resting. So you can go to yourrelationshipwithgod.com/other people's shoes. I'll open that up and you guys can get in there. It's just 4 days of me speaking God's truth over you and helping you dig down to what you've been letting define you and define your worth so that you can be grounded in who you already are, because God says that you're accepted and you belong. And when we work from that place, it allows our motivation to shift. It allows us to rest, and it allows us to live a more authentic life.
Wow, that's awesome. So we will definitely have that in our show notes.
Awesome.
Take a look at that. Be aware of that. All right. So Emily, it is the silliness portion of the show. Now you may have thought you already had some silliness and endured some of my awesome jokes, because they were awesome, weren't they?
They were amazing.
Okay. All right. Just checking on that. That is not part of the silliness that we do, but it is good that you are being real and authentic like we've been talking about. We do this silliness at the end of our show. It's called Senseless. And it's these 5 questions centering around our senses. And then 6th is the wild card. And I know you're not probably a big sports nut in Montana. You guys don't even have a professional sports team.
I think that's more of a personality thing but yeah, we don't have professional sports.
I mean, you have the University of Montana. Aren't they the Grizzlies?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I did not Google that. I actually knowledge.
I'm impressed. So. I'm always impressed when people remember.
In fact, we had a kid. You'll have to Google this because I don't remember his name, but a kid from my city that I'm from, Eagle Point, where I live, he actually played at the University of Montana football. So there you go. Fun fact.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have the Tar Heels Cup because we're big Tar Heels fans, at least in this room. Outside of the room, I don't know. We can only protect what's inside the room.
Got it.
That's something to think about. All right, I'm roll for you. Here you go. And it's this. Number 6. Might be backwards.
Got it.
Number 6 is this. You get a weekend, which you're like, all right, I'm already excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No kids. Kids can't come. Sorry, I'm going to kick them out. So you get a weekend with one person. Now, maybe it's obvious. Maybe it's not. I don't know. One person you get to spend the weekend with. And what would you do? And where would you go?
I would go to the beach with my husband.
Not even thinking about that.
No. We've been trying to plan this trip for over a year. Can you tell?
Now help me, because geographically speaking, is there the ocean nearby Montana? Because I don't think most people could, by the way, pick Montana out on the map. If none of the states are labeled, I don't know if a lot of people could pick Montana.
Oh, man. No, and I think that's part of the problem, is getting to somewhere where the beach is warm is a trek.
Stinking Montana.
It's gorgeous here.
I've heard that. I have actually want to go there because it's big sky country. I want to go there. I want to see it. You guys got some buffalo, I've heard, right?
Yep. You go hit Yellowstone up. Just please don't try to pet the buffalo. Don't be the next headline.
I'm doing a selfie or a reel or a live on Graham and the buffalo comes at me. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
That is a good no to know. Okay. Emily, first off, thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate it. Just want to say thank you so much for being on. All right, guys and gals, kids and campers alike, that is it. That is all. That is our show today. Do me a favor. Maybe not right this second, but when you have a moment. I mean, it'd be cool if it was right this second. Can you just reach into your pocket, maybe your purse? Do you still have these, ladies? Help me out with this. I don't know. A coin purse. My grandma had one. She had a coin purse, and inside her coin purse, she had all kinds of coins. She had quarters. I think she had a couple $50 every now and then. But I want you to maybe do this the next time you get coin, which I know is not Bitcoin, but coin. Just to be clear, I don't know anything about Bitcoin. But the next time you get a coin, specifically a quarter, I want you to just flick it up in the air for me. And I want you to just watch it kind of spin in the air and then catch it if you can. It's kind of tricky to do. On one side, we have the heads. On the other side, we have tails. We know this, most of us. Is life a lot like that for you right now? When you come to a decision, it's, well, let me go get that coin. Let me go get that and flick it up in the air. Is it yes or is it a no? Because today, I think we learned a valuable lesson in knowing where to go to get the yes, knowing where to go to get the no. And if you didn't get that, well, I would invite you, rewind, listen again. Because right now in this day and age, let me tell you, post-COVID, I'm saying it. I'm going to coin it. I'm going to hashtag it post-COVID. What are you learning? What have you done? That 2 years of hibernation is now over. It's over. Sorry, Groundhog saw its shadow. We're done. We're moving on. But I mean this in all sincerity. The next time you say yes, why are you saying yes? And the next time you say no, why are you saying no? And if you don't know your motivation behind it, maybe take some time to really sit down and think about that. Just a thought for you as we get out of here. One more thought, of course, is this. Do not ever forget. Please, oh please, oh please, do not forget this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.